be here during these days in Los Angeles. As you know, the church in the United States, the Catholic Church in the United States is rather unique in the world because we are a church of immigrants. Most Catholics, their families came to the United States already as Catholics from numerous countries all over the world. Obviously from Africa, from Europe, from Asia. They came to this Western Hemisphere already carrying with them the Catholic Church and carrying that Catholic faith enculturated in the traditions of their own nations. So the unique thing about the United States is that the church didn't come here and evangelize the people and convert a homogeneous faith community, but rather all of these various communities came from throughout the world in order to become the Catholic Church in the United States. And even though we have numerous converts every year within the states, the majority of Catholics in this country found their Catholic faith through their relatives coming from foreign countries. And that's a very unique situation for us. So we're very conscious, the Church in the United States, the bishops in the United States, about the whole question of immigration, of migration from one country to another, from one place to another. Being a church of immigrants, we're very concerned for those who come to us in every generation as immigrants from foreign nations. One of the experiences the church has so strongly in the United States is that the first generation who always comes with their own culture, with their own tradition, with their own very rooted familial faith. It's a faith that's rooted in their families. And they come here and they, for the most part, in the first generation of Catholics arriving from a foreign country, remain very much attached to the church. The second generation becomes a little different, because the second generation being born here in the United States come not as immigrants, but rather as a kind of in-between generation. They accommodate themselves to the American culture while retaining many of the traditions and the very strong faith belief that their parents have as first-generation Catholics. And so we always refer to the second generation as the generation that accommodates itself to the United States. And one of the problems with accommodation is that we do, in fact, in that period of time, lose some people from the faith. As they become more and more used to the American culture, they may become attracted away from the faith that is strongly part of their family. And so they tend to practice the faith when they're with their families. And when they're away from their families, they may or they may not, depending how strongly rooted their own personal faith is. The critical generation is the third generation, because the third generation becomes the enculturated generation. They become the generation that has become so Americanized that if they're going to retain their faith belief, it's either because it is so strong in their family that it has been part of who they are, or because they've come to a personal assessment and belief. But we lose the largest number of people from the faith in the third generation. And so lately, the bishops of the United States have been discussing that. How, in fact, do we hold people to a strong faith in the church? Because the church isn't an institution the way other institutions in society are. It has a hierarchy, but it's not a hierarchical organization. The church is the people. We are the church, the family of God, and as a family, we like to keep our family members together, to not lose them. When they drift away, whether it's your personal family, or your extended family, or the family of the church, there's a certain sense of loss when people drift away, no longer become part of the community that gathers. And so we're very conscious of the need to do what is right, to continue to provide and serve the needs of our Catholic community in the third, fourth, fifth, and subsequent generations of the church, so that they remain rooted as the church, the Catholic Church in the United States. One of the realizations we came to recently is what holds us in the faith is not necessarily how much you know. We've put so much of our emphasis on catechesis in the past on educating in the doctrine of the church, the rules and regulations of the church, and people who learn these things very well and can recite them back very well still walk away from the church. The realization is what holds people in the church is if they have an identity in the church. If they become their own self-identity is as a Catholic. To that we can add education, to that we can add all kinds of formation experiences, but the heart and soul of staying in the church is becoming one has an identity in the church. One looks at themselves and says, I am a Catholic.